What's up guys, and welcome back to a new video where we'll be diving into building resources in Nova. Quick pause. Do you want to support the channel and want me to continue on creating content? Well, you can support the channel on Patreon right now, where you get benefits such as our private Discord group where you can share your coding issues and other developers will help you out. If you are interested to join, the link can be found in the description down below. The primary feature of building an admin panel are most of the times defined inside a resource controller, where simple CRUD operations will be performed. In Nova, you could easily define a new resource which basically handles all those operations for you behind the scenes. If we navigate to the CLI and run the php artisan command for a moment and scroll up to the end commands, you'll find a new command right here called Nova:resource, which will create a new resource class for you. Now let's run the command. Let's say php artisan Nova resource, and let's name our class product. If we hit enter, you'll see that Artisan prompted us with a message saying that our resource class has been created and it has been stored inside the app directory, Nova directory, where it created a product class. Now this doesn't generate a products controller where you'll find all resource methods defined. Nova works a little bit different. If we navigate back to our source code for a moment and open the app directory, you'll see that Nova has created a Nova subdirectory for us when we installed Laravel Nova. Inside the Nova subdirectory, you'll find a dashboard subdirectory, which we won't cover right now, but definitely will do later on. And it has also created a product.php file for us. And if we open it, you'll see the class called product, which is extending the resource class, which has been located in the same directory. Right here, you'll find static functions that you can override inside any other class which is extending it. Now let's close it and let's focus on our product class. Our first property is already throwing us an error right here. This is happening because a Nova resource class gets its information from the associated model. In most cases, you'll have to name both of these classes the same. So whenever you want to create a product resource, you need to have a product model. Right now, it's throwing us an error because it's looking for a class with the same name inside the model directory. From that model, it could grab the associated table from the database or migration. Does that make sense? The flow we just performed is actually wrong. So let's delete our product resource class. Alright, let's navigate to the CLI and we're going to create a new model named product by saying php artisan make me a new model called product, and we will be adding the -m flag for it for our products migration. If we hit enter, you'll see that our product model and our product migration has both been created. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm and let's search for the create products table. We're not going to work with relationships yet, so let's define the tables first that a product needs to have. Now next to the ID, it will be a table string for the slug. We have a name, so table string name, which will be the product name. We have a table string for our description. We have a table double for the price. We have a table string for our SKU, which we will cover later on. We have a table integer for our quantity. And we have a table boolean for our is published, which has a default of true. Now let's navigate back to the CLI and let's perform that php artisan migrate command to migrate our products table. Now let's navigate back to PHP Storm and let's search for our model / product. Since we need to make sure that we fill our property fillable inside the product model so we can add mass assignment to it. So right under our trait, let's say protected fillable is equal to an array. And the columns that will be added for mass assignment will be the slug, the name, the description, the price, the SKU, the quantity, and the is published. Now that we have defined our product model and our product migration, we should run the Nova resource command one more time inside the CLI to define our resource again. So let's navigate back to the CLI and let's run php artisan Nova:resource named product. If we hit enter, navigate back to PHP Storm, open our product resource class, you'll see that the value of our property model isn't giving us an error right now since our product model does exist. Once again, it found the class model because we named our resource class the same. If we navigate back to the browser, refresh it, you'll see that inside our navbar, a new resource of product has been added. If we click on it, you'll see that we have no data defined inside our resource. Now this is obviously happening because we don't have data and we haven't defined our table. So let's do that. Let's navigate back to PHP Storm and let's scroll down to the fields method right here. Now our fields method is returning an array, which should represent the tables from our database. At the moment, it's simply returning the ID of our resource right here. Now let's actually delete it, because we do obviously want to have an ID, but there's not really a point of showing it to the users. Laravel offers tons of different classes that you could use to create new field types, and a field type is basically what we have right here. I can't cover them all because there are tons of them, which I will link in the description down below, but keep in mind that the usage of almost all of them are identical, meaning that they work in the same exact way. The only difference is that you need to call a different class. Now let's work with a couple fields for this example. Now keep in mind that every field type is a class itself. So whenever we write down slug, which is a Nova field type, we need to make sure that we pull it in. And right inside of the import right here, you'll see a Laravel /Nova /fields. So let's hit enter. Once you have imported the class, you could add a double colon, which PHP Storm has done for me, and call the static make method right here. This will basically create a field inside the table, but also an input field where we can create new products or edit a new product. Now the make method is throwing us an error, and that's happening because it's accepting one required parameter, which is the name of the field. Inside our database, we named it slug. So let's add a capital S of slug. Quick note, a huge plus that Nova has is that it will change our Pascal case of slug right here into snake cases. So it could find a database column for us, which is pretty awesome. And that's what I like about Laravel in general. It uses so many magic methods behind the scenes. Nova also allows you to chain multiple methods to the make method to specify the needs, what is required and whether it should be visible or not. For the slug, we're basically going to chain the from method to it, since we don't want to define the slug ourselves every time we define a new product, but it simply has to be created from the name column. So let's say from the name. Now before we test this out, I quickly want to create a new user through the database. So let me connect real quick. Alright, let me open the products table. Now let me add one new row right here. Let's say the ID is 1, the slug is iPhone 14, the name is iPhone 14 as well, the description is test, price is $10.19, the SKU is just a random number, quantity is 25, it is published, and it's updated at. Alright, now let's run it, close it, navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh our products overview, and right here, you'll see that a new column of slug has been added to our table. Now Laravel offers two shortcuts when you're located on a resource page. If you press on the letter C on your keyboard, you'll be navigated to the create resource page. If we navigate back for a moment and open one specific product, you'll see that we have been redirected to the product detail page. If we click on the letter E right here, you'll see that we've been redirected to the update resource page. So basically editing a product. For now, let's go back and let's click on C, where we have been redirected to the create product page, where you'll see that it has created a new input field for our slug. If you don't want to name your column or label right here, the same as the underlying database column, you could pass in a second argument inside a make method. Right here. The first argument will represent the new column label name. So let's say slug of product, while the second argument will be the attribute, which needs to be equal to the database column. In our case, it will be slug. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you'll see that the label of our input field has been changed to slug of product. Now let's navigate to PHP Storm and let's undo what we just did and keep it equal to the slug, because it was just a simple example to show you what you could customize and what not. Now let's add all the other fields that we have defined inside our migration. Now our name will be a string, so we need to make use of the text field type. Then we need to change the make method to it, and what we want to make is a new name. On the line below, we need to define the description, which we will be using the markdown field type for, with the name of the description. Then we have our price, which we won't use as an integer or a number, but simply as a currency, and I'll show you why in a second, with the name of price. Then we have our SKU, which will be a text, make, and it will be called SKU. Then we need our quantity, which is a number, make, quantity. Then we have our status, which was a Boolean. So we could basically say, well, get me the Boolean field type, make. And we're going to pass in 2 arguments right here. The name will be status, while the column name will be is published. If we save it and navigate to the browser and refresh it, you'll see that we have to find all input fields to create a new product. If we navigate back to the overview, you'll see that we have filled in our table. I am missing my slug because I need to get rid of the attribute. All right. Yes, this looks better. Now, honestly, I got to say that I really like the design of Nova, but there are some things that are bothering me. You can't customize the input fields when you create a new product right here to align them next to each other. At the moment, some of them are taking way too much space. Think about the slug. Why do you need a slug input field that's this big? We're not working with that many input fields, but imagine if you did. It will be a scroll party right here. And the same goes for the text area field, which we aren't using right now, but it just looks weird that all the other fields are equal aligned and the markdown pops out. And there's no method you could chain to make the width smaller. So I hope that this definitely changes in the future of Nova. But let's continue on. I think we should somehow show users that certain fields are required, right? Since we haven't defined any nullable tables inside our migration. So even though they are required, you'll have to specify it here again. And that's pretty easy to do. What we could do is navigate back to PHP Storm and simply chain the required method to fields that are required. Next to the slug, we have the name, which is required as well. The description should be required as well. The price too, which is very important. The SKU as well. The quantity as well. And the status as well. So let's say required. If we save it and navigate back, refresh it, you'll see that an asterisk has been added to certain labels of our field, which basically indicates that they are indeed required. Our price is currently using $1, which is not something that I want because I'm from Europe. Now, once again, Laravel Nova is very powerful, so we could navigate back to PHP Storm, and right after our currency required, we could chain another method, which is currency, where we basically could add the currency we want to use. So let's say EUR for euro. Save it, navigate back, refresh it, and you'll see that the $sign has been changed to a euro sign. Nice, right? We're already making progress. Now what's next? Well, the slug will be created based on the name. So why give users the options to add a slug themselves? Nova offers an incredible option for it. You can't chain a disabled method to it, but it allows you to add the with meta method to it, which allows you to add meta information to it. So let's do that. Let's navigate to PHP Storm, and let's align it on the line below. Let's chain a new method to it called with meta, which accepts an array with a key of extra attributes with a value of an array. And let's hit enter right here, where we're simply going to pass in another key value pair, where we will set the read-only equal to true. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you'll see that our slug input field has been disabled and you can't add it yourself anymore. Once we create a new product and try to edit it, it'll add a customization button next to it, which allows you to edit the slug. Let me actually show that to you. Let's go to a product, let's edit it. And right here, you can't edit the slug, but you need to click on customize first. If we navigate back to our product overview, create a new product, add a name of iPhone 14 Max, you'll see that the slug will be auto-generated based on the name input field, since we changed the from method to it, and it's creating the slug from the name input field. So let's add the product. Let's add a description of test again, the price of $14.19. SKU is a random number, quantity of 25, and the status is true. As you can see in the bottom right, it allows you to create one and go back to the overview, or you could create a product and add another, which is a pretty cool option if you want to add products fast. Let's click on Create Product. You'll see that we have been prompted with a message saying that this product has been created, and we have been redirected to the show method of a resource controller, right? We're looking at one single product right now. At the top, it's saying product details of an ID of number 2. By default, Nova shows the ID of rows, but it allows you to change this right inside of the resource class. So let's do that. Right at the top, you'll find a public static title property right here, which we could change to name. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you'll see that the product details of iPhone 14 Max has been printed out. Now if we click on products in the sidebar, you'll see that a new product has been added right here, where the name is iPhone 14 Max. In most cases, you don't want to show all fields on your table overview, but they are required when you want to create a product. An example might be the slug. It's not really necessary for a user since we already have the name, which is pretty much the same as the slug, right? But the spaces have just been replaced with dashes. Nova allows you to change certain methods to show or hide fields based on the resource method. So it has the show on index, show on detail, show on creating, and show on preview to show a field. It also allows you to hide fields through the hide from index, hide from detail, hide when creating, and hide when updating methods. It also allows you to show it on certain pages through the only on index, only on forms, only on detail, and except on forms methods. We obviously can't cover them all, so let's just go over a couple fields and see where we could apply one or another. I'll also add a link in the description if you want to go over them on your own pace. Let's start off with the slug. Let's navigate back to PHP Storm. Now let's go to our fields method right here. And let's actually go right above our with meta just to align it easier, where we're going to change the hide from index method to disable it from the table overview. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, you'll see that the slug isn't visible on the table. And if we click on Create Product, you'll see that we can indeed see our slug when creating a new product. At the moment, we're basically hiding it from the index method inside a resource controller, if we think about it as a Laravel application that uses resource controllers. Next to the methods I've just mentioned, Nova also allows you to build up a modal to quickly see information about a product. Now this can be done by simply chaining the show on preview method to the fields that should be visible. Now let's say that you don't want to show all these fields to a user, but you do, let's say, want to show the name. What we could do is simply chain the show on preview method. Now let's do it for a couple more. Let's say the description as well. So the description is show on preview. The price is pretty important as well. So let's align it for a moment and let's say show on preview. The SKU is important, but we're just going to skip it. Let's say the quantity as well. So let's say that we want to show our quantity on preview. And let's say the status as well. So let's align it and let's say show on preview. Now, if we navigate back to Google Chrome, you won't directly see changes on your table overview. But if we click on the triple dots right next to the CRUD operations, you'll see two options. Replicate, so basically creating a new product with the same values, and preview, which has been created by the show on preview method that we just added. If we click on it, you'll see a model popping up with a name, description, price, quantity, and status, which are basically the fields that we added to our field types. Now, if you try to create a new product, you'll see that it has default placeholders, which are based on the label. Nova allows you to override it, and guess what? With the placeholder method. So let's navigate back to PHP Storm and start at the top. Let's say that for our name, it has the placeholder method, which says product name. It's not necessary for the description because it's a markdown. Let's say for the price, let's add a placeholder. of product price, the SKU of placeholder, product SKU. Then we have the quantity, which has the placeholder of product quantity. And we can't add it for the Boolean as well because it's a checkbox. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you'll see that we have overridden the default placeholders of a product. Now at the moment, you'll see that our table styling of our overview is pretty messed up because some columns are aligned to the left, center, or even to the right, which in my honest opinion is pretty strange. This should be a default setting that Nova applies themselves, but it could be easily fixed by chaining the text align method to it, where you could choose between left, center, or right. Now, I personally like to work from left to right, so let's navigate back to PHP Storm, and right at the top, start with our slug, add the text align method to it with a default of left. Let's do it for the name as well. Let's say text align left. The markdown isn't necessary because we are not showing our markdown on our table overview. We deal with our price, so let's say text align is left, the SKU as well. Same for our quantity and our Boolean as well. If we navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, you'll see that our table has been aligned to the left, which makes the looks of it a lot better. Now finally, I'd like to show you how you could add additional information to a certain input field. At the moment, we're using the SKU right here, which most people aren't even familiar with. What we could do is navigate back to PHP Storm, and for our SKU text field, we could basically chain the help method to it, where we could pass in a string as an argument where we pass information about the input field. So let's say number that retailers use to differentiate products and track inventory levels. Let's navigate back to Google Chrome, refresh it, and right here, you'll see that a paragraph has been added right below the input field with information of the data that needs to be added right there. This is a huge feature, but the font is actually pretty small, and in dark mode, the text is very gray, which makes it pretty difficult to read. Now this was it for this episode where I showed you how you could build resources in Laravel Nova. In the next video, we're going to stick to resources for a moment, where we're going to dive into some resource configurations. If you do like my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button.